Well, my name is Dr. Bradley Wolfe, and we're going over Chapter 8 in the Public Speaking Project textbook on organizing and outlining. So organizing and outlining can feel tedious at times, right, when you're going through this information and trying to figure out the details and how much detail to provide in an outline. Some people like using a manuscript where they write out the entire outline, but I advise against that because then students try to read that, right? And we write differently than we speak. So I recommend using more of a keyword outline where you're just using the keywords and ideas, or a full sentence outline where you're writing out a full sentence for each of your main points, but you're going to talk beyond that. So this chapter is going to go through some of those ideas, different types of outline and how to outline. It also has some examples in here. I'm not necessarily going to go through the examples in detail, but they're definitely there available for your reference. So it has a few chapter objectives here that we're going to go through. So talking about topic selection, formulating specific purpose statement, crafting a thesis statement, arranging the main points of your speech, using different organization styles that we can go through, connecting your points to one another. So really looking at those transitions and how the entire speech flows, and then creating a preparation and speaking outline for your speech. So really this outline is your preparation, right? You'll practice the speech beforehand as well before you actually give it. But the outline is, getting the flow together, writing it all down, getting those ideas into a cohesive state so you can practice, so you can have things together. Similar to writing an essay, right? You might have an essay outline before writing the actual essay. So those are definitely separate tasks that you'll want to consider and kind of piece out those different tasks. So this is, again, breaking it down into piece by piece instead of trying to just sit there and give an entire speech at once. Some people, they're very talkative, very extroverted, maybe very good storytellers. So they can go up there and just tell a story and, maybe their interpersonal conversations be very fascinated. But for most of us, we want to think through our topics and, how we're going to discuss them. Even in things like stand-up comedy, the comedians often will have notes and say, okay, how are we going to have these jokes connect to each other? And then they may add impromptu things in the moment to go along with the mood of the audience. So that's the other reason why I recommend against a manuscript, is because you want to be able to have that interaction and feed off the audience, be able to give examples or, move with their reactions. You'll get some nonverbal communication, nonverbal reactions that will be helpful for you in adjusting your presentation. So first here is the topic, the purpose, and thesis statement. So here's a quote from Ice Cube to start off this section. I think reading is important in any form. I think a person who's trying to learn to like reading should start reading about a topic they're interested in or a person they are interested in. So that's Ice Cube who said that. And similar with topic selection, pick something you're interested in, right? If you're making a speech, maybe for the first time, or you've given a few speeches before, you always want to talk about something you're interested in because that can excite the audience, right? If you're not excited, if you find the topic boring, the audience is probably going to have feel like it's boring as well. Now, if you get a topic assigned to you, like sometimes at a workplace, you'll give a presentation, you don't have a lot of say. Hopefully you like your job and are excited by your job, but you don't necessarily have a lot to say over that topic. You can try and find ways to make it entertaining, or why is this important information for people to hear? So again, think with your audience in mind, but don't choose a topic just because you think your audience is going to like it, right? You're your first person here who needs to be taken into consideration when selecting a topic. So talks a little bit about the rhetorical situation here. So these are the different factors that make up the speech situation. So again, where's it taking place? Are you giving it in a classroom? Are you giving the speech online? Are you giving it in the workplace? So thinking about that rhetorical situation, who is the audience? What is the topic? What's the audience's interest in the topic? And how these different factors combine is something to take into consideration. So here's some questions they give for selecting a topic. So thinking about important events, you can say, what do you care about the most, right? What do I care about the most? What do I want to talk about? What's something that I want to advocate for? What things make me angry or make me happy? Again, feeding into those emotions. We have that ethos, the credibility, the pathos, the emotion, and the logos, the logic. What's going to get your emotion going? That's going to help the audience's emotion going as well. What beliefs and attitudes do I want to share? And is there some information the audience needs to know? Again, so, just generally, what kind of information are you going to want to share with that audience that you think is important, that's important to you in some way, and also important to the audience? So we can formulate purpose statements. So when you're honing in on that specific topic, we're going to work on the purpose statement. And a purpose statement clearly states what you would like to achieve as a result of the speech. So there are general purpose statements. So the general purpose may be to inform, if you're giving an informative speech, to persuade, to inspire, to celebrate, to mourn, or to entertain, right? You're going to have a very specific purpose. If you are in college, right, in a college classroom, you're probably assigned what your specific purpose is. You're either going to give an informative speech, which would be to inform, persuasive speech, which is to persuade. Sometimes, not as often, you may have to celebrate or to entertain. Sometimes those are done in the classroom, maybe as more of an exercise. I don't normally assign those speeches, but certainly that's something I may do in the future. Something fun, right? It can be a fun thing to do to entertain people, having that as your purpose. That always can make a fun speech. That's what, if you're doing stand-up comedy, that's your purpose. But informative speeches and persuasive speeches are the most common in both college and also in the world around us. We're trying to inform people and we're trying to persuade people, but certainly these others exist. Then you're going to use that specific purpose, or sorry, the general purpose, to create your specific purpose statement around one of those goals. So what are you going to inform the audience about? What are you going to persuade the audience about? You may want that thesis right in there in the speech. You're going to want to say it so the audience knows what it is. I'm going to inform you about, I'm going to inform you about art history. A specific period in art history is what my speech is going to be about. Or I'm going to persuade you to drink more water, right? It's, good to drink water, and I'm going to persuade you to do that, right? So that's where you're getting that specific purpose statement that brings together your general purpose statement of informing, persuading, entertaining with your topic choice. And using that specific purpose statement can help write your thesis. So it says here, writing the thesis statement. Your specific purpose statement is a tool that you're going to use to write your talk, your speech, but it's unlikely to appear verbatim. So the thesis is what you're going to say during the speech. You may not say it. You may polish it a bit, right? So instead of just saying, I'm going to persuade you to drink more water, right? Okay, by the end of the speech, I'm going to tell you, you're going to understand the value of drinking more water, and I hope you're going to integrate that into your life, right? I didn't say I'm going to persuade you specifically, but I said, this is what you'll be able to do by the end of the speech. You're going to understand, and you're going to start implementing it into your life. And so, again, you may not use those words to inform or to persuade. You'll have that specific purpose. It's great. You can, right? That's a simple way of doing it. If you're not a very creative person, you're like, hey, I just want this simple and straightforward. You can go ahead and use, use your, especially if you're newer to, if you've given a few speeches, right? By the end of the semester, hopefully you're not doing that. But if it's your first speech or your first time using specific purpose statements, you may use that as part of your thesis or use that as your thesis. Maybe polish it a little bit, change it as you want. But that can be part of your thesis statement. But the thesis, again, may be a little bit more creative. Next, you're going to write the body of your speech. So again, that's kind of the, the overview. So what is your purpose, right? What are you doing with your speech? And then you're going to go into the content of the speech. So thinking about the main points. Again, depending on what organization format you're going to have, you're going to have different types of main points. You may just have different categories of points. I'm going to inform you about these different benefits of drinking water. It could be a problem solution, where here's the problem if you don't get enough water. As a society, we don't get enough water, and here's the different facts to back that up. And the solution is to drink more water. So problem solution, those may be your main points. So you're going to want to figure out what are your main points for your speech. You probably have already done some research. So you might want to think, how does that research frame these main points, or how does your research can fit into some main points? Talks about using parallel structure. You should always use this when writing. This is what I've given feedback on essays. Again, not speeches, but essays. A lot of people don't use parallel structure. We don't always use it in speeches either. But parallel structure refers to the main points that are worded using the same structure, perhaps by starting with a common introductory clause. You can also use them all starting with the same part of speech. Like if you're listing things off, in a sentence, it could be noun, noun, noun. Sometimes it's noun, adjective, verb, and it's just harder to read. It doesn't flow as well when you don't have parallel structures. You're going to want to use that same part of speech or the same introductory clause. You're going to want something similar throughout them. So if you're going to talk about drinking water, maybe we want to use verbs. You should drink water. I should think of these examples beforehand. Again, I don't, what other verbs could we use along Or we could just talk about benefits, right? The benefits of drinking water, the detriments to not drinking water, right? Again, using those common parts of speech for each of the points. And then you're going to have subpoints as well to help prove your main point. So this is where you're plugging in the research and supporting information. Maybe you have an anecdote from your own life, maybe you have quotes, statistics. Those are going to be the subpoints. So main points use parallel structure. Subpoints don't always use parallel structure in that part of it. So different organization styles. So when you're creating the organization, the main points, you're going to want to consider what style you're using. The styles that are given in this textbook are pretty standard. So I definitely recommend picking one of these styles and going with it. It's the easiest way to approach a speech. Certainly there are others, and if you want to research other styles, you certainly can do that. Or reach out to your instructors, such as me, right? You reach out to me if you have some other style that you want, or just getting some feedback. You can talk to a tutor, you can talk to a teacher, whoever it is. We're here to help and support you if you're struggling on how to organize it. But this first one is chronological. So if you're talking about events that are linked together in time, you probably want to do chronological. So, hey, here's the order of when things happened. Here's how this process went through. Often this will work for informative speeches. So go through, hey, here are the events that happened. You could use it for persuasive speech as well if it's a persuasive speech about different things happening in time. Like someone may give a speech on climate change. Here's how the climate has changed throughout history, and here's where it may go in the future. And here's different ways it could go in the future, depending on how we, react. How we use our energy resources. So that could be a chronological speech as well. But again, it's putting things in chronological order, in the order of when they happened. It doesn't necessarily need to be a big history over years or decades. It can be over a small period of time too. So in chronological order, do things in the process that they happened. So that could also be a chronological speech. So it talks about events that can be traced on a calendar or a clock. So you may give a chronological speech about your daily schedule, your daily routine, what you do at work, what you do in the workplace. First thing you do is clock in, then I do this, then I do that. So if you're informing people on your workplace, what your work is like, the day in the life of a nurse, whatever it may be, you could use a chronological speech. Another common way of formatting a speech, organizing it, is a topical pattern, a topical speech. So again, you're going to get big topics that, probably 3, maybe 5, could do 2, depending on how long your speech is. But they're crafted around these main points. So you're putting things in buckets, like here's bucket 1, here's bucket 2, here's bucket 3. I'm going to teach you about things. One thing, when I teach public speaking in person, one of the things that I have my students do is make an out, or have them do in the past at least, is have them make an outline on their 3 favorite foods. So what are your 3 favorite foods? This is a topical speech pattern, right? Here's food 1, here's food 2, here's food 3. So again, you're going through those 3 favorite foods. My 3 favorite foods are cinnamon rolls, French toast, and pancakes. I love breakfast foods, right? Breakfast foods are great. And then you're going to say, under those 3 topics, what supporting evidence do you have that those are good foods, right? That you like them. So again, that's pretty simple little exercise on outlining that I do with students sometimes. But that'd be the topical speech pattern. You're picking 3 topics and then connecting them together somehow. We'll talk more about connecting here in a moment in transitions. So again, they give an example here about the composition of a newspaper company for the topical arrangement. Another way is spatial arrangement according to their physical or geographic relationships. So if there's locations involved, if there's a directional focus, different parts of a museum could be part of it. First, you're going to go in here, and then you're going to go here. Top to bottom, inside out, left to right, north to south. Those are different things you may want to think about. So again, how is this arranged spatially? So again, you may have a picture on the screen to show, again, those visual aids are good. You can talk about the spatial arrangement of different parts of a phone, like I have my phone here that's plugged in. So you can do a spatial arrangement, trying to describe it. You could do an art piece. I have an art piece here that was created by an instructor at Ridgewater College here. So I may go through, spatial arrangement and talking about, okay, here's what the bottom means, the middle, the top. I don't know if it has meaning. It's pretty abstract art. I am not an artist, so I do not know what it means. I would not give a speech on that because that's not a topic that I'm very knowledgeable about. But it's something, a way you can approach it. Again, looking at that spatial arrangement, how things are laid out. Next, we have a comparative speech. So when we're comparing between 2 or more different things, you may want to compare a couple of different ways. So 2 things or more as a whole. So discuss the traits of an apple versus the traits of an orange. Second, you could talk about, again, so that's more in that topical bucket where similar, again, these overlap, there's gray area. So again, comparative, I'm going to compare an apple to an orange. Or if you're comparing apples and oranges, you can talk about the color of each as one topic, the smell of each as a second topic, and the taste of each as a third topic. So regardless of how you want to split them up, if you're comparing the things, that's a comparative speech. It gives an example here of comparing Eastern and Western cultures. So Eastern cultures, point one, Eastern cultures are more collectivistic, Western cultures are more individualistic. Eastern cultures tend to treat health issues holistically, Western cultures treat health issues more acutely. So again, each of these. And you can see the parallel structure here. It starts with Eastern and Western cultures at the beginning. So again, this parallel structure between each of the main points. I mentioned briefly the problem solution format. Here you have the problem as one main point and the solution as a second main point. Similar to this is problem, cause, solution, where you have the cause in the middle there. That's a similar pattern that's built off each other. So if you're doing a persuasive speech, this is more a persuasive format. You're talking about the problem and you're giving a solution that you're proposing and trying to get the audience involved with. So you're going to want to, again, understand that. Again, if I go back to my example of drinking water, you can have the problem. What's caused when you're not drinking water? What does dehydration do to you? And the solution is to drink more water. And here's different tips on how I can get you to drink more water throughout the day. And then you can put the cause in there as well, and the causes of dehydration. Well, it's not just about how much water you drink if you're exercising, depending on the weather, depending on these other factors, the food you're eating, how much water you're going to need throughout the day. So you can talk about, problem, cause, solution, or problem, solution. They're fairly similar. So this is a casual speech. Sorry, I have a speech impediment that gets in the way sometimes. Again, part of public speaking as well as sometimes we need to figure out how to adapt ourselves when we pronounce things. So casual speech informs the audience members about the causes and effects that have already happened. So it's talking about the relationships that already exist. So it talks about shingles as a disease, and the vaccine has very much done a good job of getting rid of shingles. So again, cause effect arrangement, looking at that cause, so cause effect. And again, you can pull in that problem, cause, solutions. Again, more like the problem solution. This is more one section for the cause, second section for the effect. What are the effects of this cause that we already know happen? So it's existing relationships that happen. So this next point, those are different organization formats. There are others. You can look for others. You can certainly do a spin on some of those, but those are some easy ones to start with if you're starting public speaking. Watching this video, you're taking a public speaking class, you're reading through a public speaking textbook, you're probably more in the beginner stages of speech. Those are great ones to go through. So that's what I recommend. Sometimes I get students in my public speaking classes who've been doing competitive speaking for a while. They probably already know some other formats that certainly you can use. But those are the basic ones that I recommend sticking with. So when you're connecting the main points, again, looking at transitions, I recommend when students make an outline that they write out their transitions, because I've noticed that if they don't, sometimes they don't use transitions. So you're going to want to be careful with those transitions to help the speech flow well, so we know when one thing's going to another. It talks about signposts. This is what I often tell my students, very good use of signposts, or you should add some signposts. Signposts are, again, here's the definition they use: words and gestures that allow you to move smoothly from one idea to the next throughout your speech, showing the relationship between ideas and emphasizing important points. So again, words and gestures. Sometimes in competitive speaking, they'll move to a different part of the stage to say, hey, I'm transitioning to a point. So they'll both have that gesture, that walk, that motion, along with the words that they're using to transition from one another. Those words can be transitional statements. So they're phrases or sentences that lead from one distinct but connected idea to another. So it says here are some examples. So you can say similarly, or in the same way, also, likewise, in other words, or differences. However, unlike the last point, on the other hand, conversely, in opposition, another view is that. So again, using some sort of phrases, statements, even some gestures that you can use to transition from one point to the other. Let me make sure. Yep. Okay. So internal previews, or you can use them within your speech, which is another type of signpost. So it will give lay out what's going to occur in your speech. So now that we've covered the the causes, now we're going to talk about the effects. So again, very simple. Now we talked about causes, we're going to talk about effects. Now that we've covered the problem, we're going to talk about the solution. And the internal preview is going to give you the main points in that next point. So that's a transitional phrase. Let me be clear. That was a transitional phrase. Now that we talked about this, we're going to talk about that transitional phrase. And internal preview is going to lay out what's going to occur. So you're going to give a preview. Now that we're going to talk about the solutions. And here's the different, key points. Again, main points, key phrases regarding those solutions. We're going to talk about how you can get involved in the solution. If we're trying to end hunger, you can go volunteer. We're going to talk, now that we've talked about the problem of hunger in our society, we're going to talk about the solutions, including volunteering your time at the local food shelf, donating to certain specific causes, or having healthier foods available in your community, supporting your local farmers market, whatever you want your solutions to be. That internal preview, you're going to just give a key point, just an overview of those subpoints, and then you're going to go into more detail with them. So just let the audience know what to expect and what's going to be covered. We also have summaries. So summaries are looking backwards. Now that I talked about the problems that were this, that, and the other thing, I'm going to go talk about the solution. So again, summaries are like internal previews, but they look backward and recap what you just said. Now we're used to, in the introduction, give your overview of main points and your conclusion, restating your main points. These are when you do it in the middle of the speech, so transitioning between one point and another and go into more detail. So those previews and summaries can be very helpful in transitioning from one topic to another. So outlining your speech. This talks about the different types of outlines that are available. Again, I talked at the beginning about how detailed the outlines need to be. So there can be different types. So one talks about a preparation outline. So this is a working practice or rough outline. It's used to work through the various components of your speech and to kind of lay things out. May not be super polished, but you're just getting everything together. You're laying out, okay, but this idea here, I have this research here. Oops, it looks like I have a gap over here that I need to go find. So again, it's just trying to get everything roughly together and see what arguments you may need to strengthen, or say, hey, I have too much information in this section. That's going to take way too long for the amount of time I have. So what can I pull out? So this is just preparing your speech as a preparational outline. A speaking outline is an outline you will use when delivering the speech. So sometimes people use note cards. They like those note cards that they give a speech from. You certainly can do that. Some people use the speaking outline. I prefer using a speaking outline. Just note cards, you're shuffling through them, and again, sometimes people drop their note cards, they get out of order, it can cause problems. I just like using an outline. That's just my preference. But a lot of people are used to giving speeches with note cards. That's fine too, right? You always can use note cards, or you can use an outline. I just go with the outline. So this is the outline you use when delivering a speech. This is going to be a very, you may have brief phrases or words to trigger the ideas in your mind. Right, you may have a direct quote that you want or statistic written out in that with the speaking outline. If you need to say something specific or you want to get the quote right, but often it's just going to be what's enough information for me to trigger where I'm going next, or what are the things that I want to cover here. So just a couple of key ideas. Not even necessarily a full sentence. Like I don't use full sentences unless it's a direct quote. But it talks here about full sentence outlines as well as another way of doing it, but often, people can sometimes read the speech if it's a full sentence outline. You're trying to read those full sentences and it can cause problems, right? It sounds unnatural. That's the problem it causes. It sounds unnatural and we don't write the way that we speak. So that's why I just like writing some key ideas or phrases or keywords that's going to remind me of what I'm going to say. Now, when you're turning in an outline for a class, you're probably going to want to have a polished preparation outline with enough details. So not just figuring out what's missing, but putting in those missing key components. Often I tell my students to turn in a full sentence outline, so I have a strong idea of what you're talking about. A speaking outline, you may just have some keywords that make sense to you, but may not make sense to another person. So if you're getting feedback on your outline, these speaking outlines may not be helpful because you may just have a couple of keywords to remind, oh, I'm going to talk about that. Whereas with the preparation outline, you can have more detail here. So I have students, when giving a speech, to turn in a preparation outline. So maybe a full sentence outline, you can have some keywords if it's just a topic, right? If we're doing a topical speech about apples and oranges, you may just have the topic be apple. And then the subpoints, you might want full sentences, like here's the fact I'm going to share, here's the source I'm going to have, here's how I'm going to cite it. So having a more detailed preparation outline can be helpful. with a combination of full sentences and keywords, depending on what's appropriate on those points. So it also use a hierarchical format. I give sample outlines to my students, so it automatically has hierarchy. So because I've noticed before when I wasn't doing that, when I wasn't giving out sample outlines, that they'd be all over the place. Some people wouldn't have this structure or these different levels and hierarchy. Some people would do it in a variety of different ways. And once I started providing a template, it's like, oh, I just have to pop everything in, and it works out. So you're welcome. I hope that's helpful for you. Certainly, if you want to do it in a different way, you can do it in a different way. Right? I don't force people to use a sample. There are plenty of templates online as well, and sample essays. It's plagiarism just to take an outline online and use that as your own, right? You don't want to plagiarize, but if you're just using this structure or the key ideas, you know, like not the key, you don't want to take ideas, you want to take the, you know, again, those, like what I use for my template, it says, you know, like, okay, put the topic here, you know, now do a subpoint 1, subpoint 2, right? Transition, right? Just those main things that you're having, and you fill it in with your own content, right? You don't want to steal content online. That's plagiarism, and that can be found with plagiarism checkers, which I certainly use, and many instructors use those plagiarism checkers. But you can cite things, right? If you cite things, if you use direct quotes, cite it. If you're using another resource, cite it. If you're getting information from someone who gave a speech online, like, hey, I want to quote them, use a direct quote. That's perfectly fine. So of course you're going to use research, but you want to cite things properly. Another chapter, the previous chapter of this textbook talked a little bit about citations. So just make sure you're citing properly. So here's an example, again, exactly what I was saying of the different main points and subpoints. So this is what you could use for as a template. So you could use this as a template, saying, okay, I'm going to put my specific purpose, my thesis statement here. I'm going to put a paragraph here. Okay, now do the main point, you know, subpoint, supporting points, transitions. So write out the transition here, write a conclusion. So it describes what a conclusion is here in a bibliography. So this is exactly what I mean about finding something online that you can use as a template and taking the key ideas. So again, it just tells you what an introduction is. You're not going to have that as part of your introduction. You're not going to write paragraph that gets the attention of the audience. You're going to write out your paragraph that gets the attention of the audience and do what it says to do here. So I like this outline formatting guide. I use a similar one, not the same one as a template in my classes, but certainly if you know, my students can use this as well. So go ahead and do that if you'd like. Whatever makes sense to you. They're very similar. The other one just has them kind of shifted over and tabbed over. So I like it better just because visually you can see those indents and see the hierarchy. So talking again about the preparation outline and the speaking outline, which we've discussed in some detail here. Of course, you can always read through this. I'm just, you know, verbalizing things because some people learn better verbalizing, listening to things, or even speaking out loud. Some people are external thinkers, but you can read through all this as well. And then using a speaking outline, again, you don't want to be staring at your paper. You just want the key ideas so you can look towards the audience and, you know, talk to them. Even if it's online, talk to your audience. I see when I'm giving a speech online like this, I don't talk to my camera here. Make sure I don't talk to my camera here often. I often look at a picture of myself on the screen. So maybe this would be a little more natural. We're giving an online speech because I'm talking to my camera, to my audience, whereas here I'm talking to the side because I look at myself on the screen when I'm talking. So maybe I'll have to watch this back to see what's better. That's one of the good things about recording yourself giving a speech, right? Even just practicing beforehand, is you can see some of these things. Oh, I was talking fast there. Oh, I didn't pronounce that very well. Or, you know, I need to give a bigger pause at that point. Some of these things we're not even paying attention to when we're talking. The ideas are just coming out. I know I've been told that I often talk too fast. And people have told me that. I wasn't noticing and I didn't hear myself talking fast. But then I recorded myself, right? I was actually recording myself interview someone, and I don't, well, I'm talking really fast there, right? That's hard to follow along. So I try to breathe and slow down. Sometimes I still talk too fast, right? If I get excited about something, I talk too fast. If I'm nervous, I'll talk too fast. That's a common thing with speakers. There are some speakers that end up talking too fast. There are some speakers that have a lot of verbal pauses, so ums, ahs, likes. And some people, the way they emphasize those verbal pauses are more distracting than other people as well. So you certainly can read through your speech or listen to your speech and record it yourself. It's a good way of knowing whether or not you're doing well. And again, if you're taking an online public speaking class, so that's one of the great things about online public speaking is you can record yourself as many times as you want until you're happy with the final result. So yes, using a speaking outline, talk to the audience, don't read off the speech, right? You're just using the key ideas. Talks about practicing in front of a mirror, practicing with a table of podium in front of you, just quickly looking down and then gazing back up at the audience, making sure to make that eye contact with the audience. So overall, in conclusion, this talking about different steps in organizing your speech. So it can be challenging, but if you use a template, if you kind of get the idea of it, it can go very fast. I often speak from from a speaking outline. You can use note cards, or it talks about using fancy PowerPoint presentations. I've used those as note cards before as well. So often if I'm giving a speech professionally, I'll have a PowerPoint presentation and the images on the slide or the words can remind me of what I want to talk about next. So that's another way of doing it. So again, just really thinking through how you're going to, bring together your essay. Start with the main topic. What is your general purpose? What is your specific purpose? Are you going to inform the audience, persuade the audience? Then you pick your organizational pattern that fits well with the facts that you have. You fit all those facts into there, look to see what you may be missing, what you need to add, if you need to take something away, whatever it is, and then start polishing your outline. Again, I like full sentence outlines to have someone else review it so they have a full idea of what I'm going to say in my speech. But when I'm speaking, you want a simplified outline or some note cards in order to speak to the audience. So hopefully that information is helpful. If it's not helpful, always feel free to reach out. I'm glad to clarify things. Right, that's what I'm here for. So feel free to let me know. And hopefully you found this useful. Thank you for listening. So I'm not just talking to myself. I'm talking to myself in my office right now. But I'm glad there are at least a few people who watch this and gain some value out of it. So you all have a good day and thanks for watching.